I would ask the contractor, what do they think about the project? I want a guy that's excited about to working on the project, but
No,
I think,
I really like that because I think
yeah,
another thing too about that question, John, is like, is he actually thinking about your project? I probably shouldn't be hiring you for my in-ground pool.
no, I wouldn't do a very good job, except for I would really enjoy renting the excavator. But after that, I don't think I'm going to do a great job. Once I learned how to say no and just focus, that's where we had the most success. Lots of guys are great contractors, but the problem is if you're asking them to do something that's outside of the realm, you're asking for more problems than it's worth.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and in today's video, we're catching up with John from BlackJack Contracting. He's going to break down for us the questions you need to ask a contractor before you hire them. So this is a subject matter that's extremely important that I know a lot of real estate investors have a lot of angst around because it's intimidating going and hiring a contractor. It's intimidating worrying about whether you're getting the right person, and these 11 questions will really set you up for success to make sure you're getting the right contractor for your project.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and really excited for today's video with John from BlackJack Contracting, and we've got a special treat. So John's going to break down for us what we can expect or what we should do when interviewing a contractor. So one, John, really appreciate you joining us and just kind of breaking this down because I know there's a lot of fear and concerns when looking at hiring a contractor.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it. Always enjoy it. Yeah, this is the question I get asked a lot is, they'll ask you if you do the area, and unfortunately, I'm not everywhere yet. So they'll ask, what should I ask, prospective contractors? So I kind of came up with a little presentation, which I don't have for you here, but I have the questions that we're going to ask, and hopefully it helps.
Awesome. And I guess before getting into this, any sort of framing we should be aware of? So like, is it better to ask these questions on the phone, in person, by email? Doesn't matter.
This is, I think, my questions are a little bit more once you've had the brief conversations with the contractor and you're starting to get into the vetting process. And I mean, we talked about this on a previous video. The first thing before these work is, you have to know what you're looking for, right? Whether you're looking for a GC or simple subcontractors that you're going to manage yourself. And once you've got that met a few, then I think these questions will help you, make your decision.
Awesome. All right. So are we just starting off like a top 10
list?
Yeah,
although it's basically I said top 10, but it's 11 questions. And basically the first question that you're going to ask this prospective contractors, have you worked on projects similar to this? And that's a key thing because, lots of guys are great contractors, but the problem is if you're asking them to do something that's outside of the realm, you're asking for more problems than it's worth because you don't want to really be the testing ground.
Gotcha. So I probably shouldn't be hiring you for my in-ground pool.
No, I wouldn't do a very good job, except for I would really enjoy renting the excavator. But after that, I don't think I'm going to do a great job.
Yeah. But again, it's important that we think about these things, right? Because I think it's easy for someone just to be like, oh, contractor, he does contracting and contracting covers everything.
No, and that's the thing is there's so many different fields, right? I mean, as I said before, I wouldn't be a great home builder either. I mean, the fundamentals are the same, but the process and the speed and the procurement and all that is very different, right? So it's guys that especially contractors that actually, pick their specialty, their niche, and then stick to it are usually the ones that are going to have the most success. But some, the young guys, very ambitious people, sometimes just want to please everybody. Mm-hmm. The power of saying no is very challenging for a lot of guys, and it was for me too. I get questions all the time. Will you come renovate my kitchen? Regular homeowner because they just know about me. But once I learned how to say no and just focus, that's where we had the most success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really important. And like also lessons here if you're a contractor as well, because I see it happens all the time. Those new guys want to overplease, like, yeah, I'll figure that out. And then they commit to it and they're just crossing their fingers. There's a good YouTube tutorial.
Exactly, right. So it's a challenge because you want to please everybody, or you're chasing. Some guys are just chasing the dollar, but once you get over that, and as you guys out in the real estate investors, it's just like you want to find the person that does the right task. If you're a guy looking for a guy just to straight do flooring, you shouldn't be hiring a general contractor. You should be finding a flooring guy because they're going to get it done fast, on time, on budget. and more than likely it's going to save you some money. But you asking that same flooring guy to go and build you a duplex, that's going to be a big problem, right? So that's the first thing you got to do, and then make sure that this person says they have experience, and then that leads into question number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Can you provide references for similar work? I think a lot of people overlook this step, and either it's time, or you just all of a sudden meet the guy and you really like him and you trust them, but
Yeah.
you still need to, and if the guy has done this before, he should be able to provide you multiple, if not a page full of references happily.
Yeah. And like, should we also be looking for like photos with those references, or like explanations of the job, and any tips on like checking references? Like, you just call up and say, hey, did you work with BlackJack, or how should you approach that?
Yeah, I'd say you want to. You're almost doing a mini interview for the references too. You don't want to bombard them, because they're volunteering their time to help you, but just ask them, like, so how was your experience with BlackJack? Like, if they're interviewing me, what job did they do for you? Was there any major hiccups? What did you like about them? Was there anything you didn't like about them? Don't take it more than 2-3 minutes of the people's time, and you'll get some pretty straightforward answers, right?
Yeah, really appreciate that, John. And I think the one other aspect there too is it's important that, if we want to make the most of these conversations, checking references, that we actually frame the question accurately as well. So I know some people have a tendency to lead the witness when you're checking references. So like, hey, you worked with John, he's a great guy, right? And it's well, now what do I say? Like, I can't say anything but yes. So the one tip I would give people is like, try and frame one question that's going to put them in a position where they almost have to say something negative, right? So like, one of my favorites is like, if you had to change one thing about your experience with so-and-so, what would it be? And like, hopefully they're going to be like, well, he did show up late a couple times, or it did stretch on a little bit. And again, that's not necessarily the end of the world, but at least we're probably going to have a realistic insight into, if things go sideways on our job, what's probably the area I should pay most attention to.
That's an excellent question. I wish I would have thought about that one before this. Yeah, I agree 100%. And then I get into third one is online reviews. So most online reviews are going to be positive, but you should be able to see something that didn't sound 100%. But even for the positive ones, I'd ask them about that specific online review. Even if it says excellent things, ask them what you did for them, ask them about timelines and budget. Just test them, because you see if you can get them to stumble a little bit. And it's not a Salem witch trial here. It's just you're trying to get down to the truth, right? Most, the problem is online reviews, half of them are going to be family members or good. So you're trying to find just any inconsistencies, and it doesn't have to be a huge drawn out process, but that's something I always say. Online reviews are powerful, but a lot of them are going to be great. But you should be able, if you guys got multiple reviews, you're going to see something with a little bit of a tick on it, right? And that's where you want to ask that question and see how he responds to it. Mistakes happen, right? Say there was a mistake on the job. How did that guy handle it? How did he respond to the online review, right? That's, shows kind of the character of the contractor interviewing.
Yeah, like one of the things that, again, I don't think a lot of people go to the BBB website anymore, but one of the things that I do look at if I go there is like, do they respond? Right. And like, to me, it's very telling the way they respond, right? Like, I've seen companies respond in very aggressive, dickish manners where I was like, either this is the worst customer ever, or you've got some bad customer support here. And I've seen other ones where I was like, oh, wow, it sounds like there was a legitimate mistake, but this owner seems to really be trying to correct it. And that to me is such a powerful thing to see, just because it's like, well, at least they're taking ownership of the situation.
Exactly. And, even I've told you guys all before, I spend a lot of money on, education, and that's one of the on to those online reviews are keys. And if you're trying to make that customer happy, because in the end, one bad review can cost you a lot of business, but it's also a great way to, vet out those contractors.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that is just, can you provide me with a certificate of insurance in WSIB? And this one should eliminate about half your customers, half your contractor list. As I told you before, insurance requirements in Ontario are a minimum of $2 million liability for you and anybody you bring on your site. And WSIB is required for anybody on your site, including that contractor and subcontractors. We deal with that challenge all the time because of the area expansion. We're always searching for new subcontractors, and we get 1 out of every 10 that actually have both. It's a pretty bad thing. It's not very as I said before, it's not a great regulated business, right? And it really should be, but that's not the point. So, I mean, if they can't provide you with insurance and WSIB within a day because they got to go back to the office or whatever and get their certificate or whatever, then that's a problem. And that should solve you, because remember, they get hurt on your job site, they wreck your job, they hurt your job site, they burn down your house. That's going to fall on you if you don't have it, right? And same with insurance, WSIB, sorry. If someone gets hurt on your job site and they're not covered, that falls back onto you.
Yeah, really appreciate that. And again, it's so easy for people to skip that step.
Yeah, and that one's so key. Right now we're working on a I don't know how many people have it, but it's a blanket insurance policy that covers anybody that goes onto the job site. So including subcontractors, that if they don't have it, we're automatically covered. Because right now our insurance says people you bring on your job might carry their own insurance. So we're trying to find a way to give us double protection, and it's a challenge, but just something to be super aware of, especially on your $100,000, $200,000 renovations these days, on your $500,000 to $1 million home. It's just, you imagine that ramification. So don't mess around with that one.
Yeah.
And then my number 5 question is, which systems do you use? So, I mean, it's just good to know some companies successfully run their business with paper and pen, and that's okay. But do they have the systems in place? Again, so this is a very subjective question to what you're doing. General contracting, you need systems. Otherwise, jobs go to hell in a handbag. If you're laying a floor, you need a little bit of a system, but it's not going to be as drastically important. But during the interview question, just see what they do, what systems they have. And you'll tell if a guy is pretty organized or not organized pretty off the answer that question. Sorry. So that one should be a pretty easy one for you to help out with.
Yeah. And I imagine, honestly, probably it's going to go one of two ways when you ask that question. Like, what systems do you use? They're going to start rhyming off the systems they use, or they're going to be like, what are you talking about?
What is the system? Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's also important to understand, if you are dealing with a general contractor and they're doing more than one project at a time, they do need some sort of system. Like, even if they've been doing it for years, you need some sort of process or system, like John said, because there's so many ways for a project or timeline to go off track. And if the moment it goes off track, if there's no system to bring it back on or to correct projections, it just spirals so fast.
Yeah, it spirals, and once that happens, there's no coming back, to be honest with you. Not anywhere near your budget and timeline, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the contractors get themselves in trouble. They'll take on too much, and we've talked about why. We won't go in there now. And then once that happens, they can't fix it. They can't. It's not a thing. And then you get into arguments and timeline delays, and then you're going to have a real bad experience. And I hear a lot about this lately, even with reputable contractors, because they just took on too much. And my advice to anybody that's in that situation is to end it as soon as possible, because the longer it goes, the more legal troubles are. And honestly, contractors have too much power when it comes to the liening process. It's not a good system, especially with real estate investors in the BRRRR model. You imagine putting a lien in the property, even if it's unjustified, and now you can't refi or sell or something like that. It's something I've seen happen recently, so it's something you got to be real careful about. And then, so once we get past that, my question is, what level of experience do you have in the field, right? So if you got a guy that's been in the contracting business for 20 years, that's great, or even 2 years, but what level of experience in what they're doing? So if you have a guy that jumped between drywall, mud and tape flooring, all that stuff, and it's just you sound like a jack of all trades, that's somebody that I don't want to see running a $150,000, $200 project, but they might be great handyman for the odds and ends or little flip renovations, that kind of stuff. So I just want to know how long they've been doing it, what they've been doing. Then I know that's a little bit close to the earlier questions for have you completed similar work, but it's not just how many. I mean, have you done one of these? Yeah. Have you done 100 of these? So that's where, when I'm making my decision on which contractor to go with, experience does bring a lot of value to your time, and they can deal with problems when they come up. So it's a simple one, but it's something I think is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then this next question is, I think, the most underrated one of them all, and one that I don't think it's discussed too early in the process, is how will we communicate during this project? You hear the most frustrations out of any consumer slash, investor
Yeah.
about, not hearing or not getting updates about
Mhm.
your project. And especially because a lot of people are investing out of town, right? So they have, this large investment, this large contract, the contractor's asking for money, but they're not sure what's going on. They're not getting phone calls. They're not getting emails back. They're not getting texts back. So I'd say number one rule when you're setting up your project or you're interviewing a contract is, agreeing, sticking to it. So if you want daily updates, then the contractor, and that might piss off the contractor. Maybe he's not the right contractor for you, but you should agree from the beginning about, maybe you agree on once a week update. You better stick to that once a week update so you're not feeling uneasy about the project. Do you have digital systems? Which systems do you use for communication? And I think if that one got settled in the beginning of a project and actually stuck to, I think that would eliminate half the problems in the actual industry.
Yeah, that's a great point.
The next question I would ask is, who will work on my project, right? So if so say you hire me and you're doing a renovation here in London, and you want to know, is it your staff? Are you bringing another sub on? What kind of subs are you using? Are they vetted? Are you using your employees? That kind of stuff, because that's something that you want to know and you want to be comfortable with. Obviously having their own staff, or is it the guy doing the work himself? I mean, you just want to know what's doing that in the beginning, and then that way you're pretty easy about the project, which leads into the next one is, how will the project be managed? So is the guy that you're hiring going to be on site every day? Does he have a project manager? Or is he just going to come and check on it once a week and hope everything's going well? That's something. Management of the project, especially in the larger projects, is probably the most underrated and something that doesn't get checked on enough. And make sure you're comfortable with how they're going to manage the project, and make sure they're sticking to that management schedule, because that's how we make sure time, budget, all those things meet. Lack of management on projects is another huge reason why projects go off the rails. And this one is just a fun one. I always think the same way when I go see a project is, I would ask the contractor, what do they think about the project? I want a guy that's excited about to working on the project, not just to know it's another check, right? So if, it's going to be a hard one, but when you're talking to him with the project, does he show a lot of interest, excitement? And I know it's a weird one, but
I really like that, because I think another thing too about that question, John, is like, is he actually thinking about your project? Or is he like, yep, sounds like a good job? Or like, is he thinking, he's like, hey, you know what? You might have an issue with this, or you might want to like, I know you want to put the kitchen here, but have you thought about you're going to have to walk all through the house with your groceries, or what? Like, if we rearrange, like those sort of little insights show me that at least they're actually thinking about the job rather than just trying to get the job.
100%. That's one of the more one of my favorite parts of doing this is doing those pre walkthroughs before you get into the construction, and brainstorming the ideas and things customers don't think about, or even the architects, engineers. Sometimes you're like, what if we do this? Or if I just raise this window 6 inches, now you can run the countertop here and all that. That's the fun part. And then, so, I mean, I've even had customers email me saying, what their selection criteria, and that's part of it. And that's awesome. And I think, that builds that rapport and that understanding of the project and what your customers are trying to obtain in the end. And that's, I didn't write that on here, but you want to know, like, especially if you're an REI contractor, like, you want to know what their strategy is, right? Is this going to be a flip, a hold, or a burr? Because I mean, some of the suggestions you make on a long-term hold are going to be different than what you're going to put on a burr, right? Because you can only take so much back out, but long-term, okay, well, this will add a lot of value and save you problems in the long run. And that's why it's important to have a good relationship contractor you're going to work with, and leads out to all these questions is so you want a great relationship basically with your contractor, right? You want to trust them, and I know that takes time, but I mean, you want to make sure that they're on the same page and not rush any of this decision. That's one thing I think this gets rushed too much, or they just think dollars only. And say it's a 10% different. You want to make sure, well, is that 10% worth it, or is that 10%? I mean, is there a reason there's a 10% type thing, which is a whole nother question. And then My last question is what's your paperwork process? Because this is where all the problems happen, right? It's the contract, it's the scope of work, it's the how it's going to be handled, electronic, digital, lawyers, all that good stuff. So you want to make sure you're comfortable with both their processes. I had my first customer reach out to me with their own contract a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, I hadn't seen this before, but makes perfect sense. Make sure that everything they want's covered, make sure everything we want's covered, and then then really, if you get all that understanding, you should have a really smooth project.
Yeah, I love it. Those are some great questions, and just building upon the last one there. Again, just even asking how the process works for paperwork. If they're like, oh, whatever you want, again, that might be a sign they don't really have much of a process in place, right? So I think there's so many additional kind of layers that you can read into in regards to the questions you laid out for us. So absolutely appreciate you breaking it down for us, John. And just a reminder for everyone, all the links to John's contact information's in the video description down below. And I don't know, did you want to mention that you're expanding?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so we're, everybody knows we've been watching the channel. We've been expanding areas, so we made it out to London and Woodstock this year. Everybody's been talking about Windsor, so our plans are September 1st right now, assuming that the world is still here by then. In the next couple months, we'll be set up in the Peterborough and Belleville area. We're just getting everything organized and some things going, but it's, I see a lot of potential out there. We went for some visits, so.
Well, that's perfect, John, because I don't think you probably didn't realize this, but we just moved our wholesaling operation out to Oshawa area. So we're hitting up Peterborough, Belleville,
oh, really nice.
Oshawa, Durham. So we'll have a bunch of investors out there looking for to hit you up on duplex conversions.
Beautiful. I look forward to it.
Awesome. Well, again, really appreciate it, John. And I hope for everyone at home, you guys are getting value from these videos, but I hope it also illustrates the importance of having the key team member, the key right team member on your team, right? You need to be able to have conversations with your contractor, ideally, the way we can have conversations with John right now. And you want to have this person be on your team. You don't want them just to be some person you pay money to, you cross your fingers and you hope they do what they said they were going to do. We need systems and processes. The whole goal here as real estate investors is to have a scalable solution to our business model, right? If every time you barely pull off the renovation, if every time you're just I hope he doesn't screw me over, that's not scalable. You're not going to last long in this business. You might get a base hit, you might get the occasional home run, but you're never going to win the game with that process. Where if you've got someone you can consistently count on, it becomes so much easier. So again, really appreciate these questions, John.
Anytime, man.
Thanks again to John for taking the time to shoot this video. Really appreciate it. If you guys got value from this video, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new to my channel. There's a link to John's contact information in the video description down below. Also, make sure you jump over and check out his YouTube channel. He's doing some great stuff there as well, just documenting his experience as a contractor and trying to set us up for success as real estate investors as well. So again, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.